What is up, guys? Welcome to another Amazon FBA happy hour. We're just going to be here answering your questions. We were going to talk repricing today, but we might just have some technical difficulties right now. So we're just going to kind of do a normal Q&A for right now. And then, actually, I just got an email from Dillon. Sorry.
So you having some issues?
Hold on. Sorry, guys. Maybe it was a different email. So actually, we will be talking repricing in a second. But just let us know your name, what's going on, and yeah, hopefully Dylan will be here in a second. What have you been up to lately?
Just started buying again. So I guess this is my official out of retirement.
Nice. That's exciting. How did it feel?
Last night, it was like I bought some pallets to just be out of retirement.
Oh man, that's exciting though. Like to get it going again. And kind of.
It was a nice break.
Yeah, we're ready for Q4 now.
Yeah, it was a good time for me to reflect on kind of what I wanted, and it was good. It was a good little break, but I'm ready to be back for quarter four. I didn't want to miss quarter four. I missed some of back to school, and so I was like, you know what? Let's get the band back together for quarter four.
You got the FOMO.
Yeah.
All right. There you go. Hey, what's up?
Hello.
How are you?
Oh, hold on one second. Sorry. There we go. Now I can hear y'all. How's it going?
Good. How's it going with you?
Good. John, good to see you again. Michaela, nice to finally meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Been following you on Twitter. It's been awesome.
I was gonna say I know you from Twitter, but I've never actually had a conversation with you. It's always weird. Like, oh yeah, I
right.
Twitter, but I've never actually had a conversation with them.
Yeah.
Social. Do you want to give everyone a little overview of kind of your story, how you got started, kind of what you're doing now? I'm gonna post on Instagram.
Yeah. Oh gosh, that's a long story. Yeah. So started as an Amazon seller. Initially got into it using the RA model because I heard about it on a podcast. I think it was like Pat Flynn's Smart Passive Income podcast back in the day with the Selling Family. Did that. It was pretty cool. You know, kind of that first phase of every seller is just proving to yourself that it works, that it's a thing. And then you're like, all right, cool. What does that mean for me moving forward? At the time, I was a full-time personal trainer and was going back to college full-time as a finance major. So eventually left the gym and kind of had to figure out what the next steps for me was. And I really just spent 10 hours a day at Targets and Walmarts and Tuesday mornings and all that stuff. And just kind of got burnt out on that, right? I've always been this, you know, how do we scale things? Like, what's the scalable path here? In RA, I found that kind of difficult given my limitations with time. So I tested the waters with online arbitrage, which I was horrible at. I am not embarrassed to say. Just could not figure it out. Don't know why. I couldn't do it. And so the next logical path is, you know, private label or wholesale. At the time, I needed to pay my bills. I was in college full time, living on my own. So it was less about, I want to build this empire and have some amazing brand, then exit it. And it was more so, how do I pay my bills and be able to just like do my own thing? And so wholesale makes perfect sense for that, right? It's cash flow positive if you're doing it right and focus in 30 days for the most part. And so that's what I did. And so I stopped sourcing, even though I could make money with RA. I only sourced wholesale just to kind of put myself in a corner and force myself to learn it. And then that started to take off, which is awesome. So eventually started the Wholesale Made Easy podcast. So we were like one of the first wholesale focused Facebook groups, content creators. I hate to call myself a content creator. It wasn't that cool, but but you know, that's what we focused on. And so eventually met my now co-founder, James. He was a wholesale Amazon seller as well. And we realized we were kind of hacking together the same internal like automations and tools and processes and systems where we're using like Google Sheets and Trello for tracking everything. And there wasn't anything built for wholesale based Amazon sellers. It was really massive like NetSuite kind of companies or nothing. And so we felt that there was a market there. And so come to find out, my co-founder was a computer science major while I was a finance major. So he's like, hey, I can code pretty well. Why don't we build something together? And that's what we did. We launched VinDrive CRM, which was the first thing. It's still around. We don't put any real focus into it, to be honest. It's a very niche thing. But we kind of cut our teeth with software and made all the mistakes as you do the first round. Pricing's too low, the market's too small, you have no idea what you're doing. And we said, okay, well, what did we learn? A lot. We also proved to ourselves that we could build product. So it came down to, okay, well, if we like this model so much and we've proven that we can do it, let's take what we learned and let's go solve a harder problem. And for us at the time, that was repricing. Because honestly, like, especially back in the day, it was just, it was overwhelming. It was too much. Like, none of it made sense. I mean, I was overwhelmed with repricing even a year into starting a repricing company. So we wanted to solve that problem. And luckily when we launched that just took off. I mean, so fast. We were in college full time, eventually, obviously, graduated, moved the company up to Boston, really built a company at the time. It was just James and I. I mean, I did customer support for the first two and a half years and all the growth up until recently. And so now that's our major focus is just Aura. And we, as of 2 days ago, relaunched. So now 1.0 is technically live.
Yeah, 1.0 is awesome. Super excited to be like using that. I really like it a lot. So much like cleaner and not that, like the old one was bad, but like it's just a much different experience. For me anyway. And I love, my favorite feature probably is the search. Like just be able to type in like a brand, or I just want to find this one certain thing and I don't have the ASIN like off the top of my head, and just being able to like pull that up is like amazing.
We really spent the last 18 months, we kind of went stealth mode because it was just, I mean, we didn't bolt on features. We rebuilt, not only rebuilt, like we wrote it in a different language that's better. We redesigned our architecture, which I know for non-technical people, they're like, cool, that sounds like it means nothing. It's actually very important. And it enabled us to create some really amazing, insane features that otherwise you just could not do because the system just could not functionally handle that. And so, it was awesome. We've had years of amazing user feedback of things that were creating friction in terms of using it and these little things. And so we took all that while we were doing this rebuild and we added those in. And so we're calling this 1.0 because technically if you log into what now is called Legacy Aura, in the bottom left, there's a version number that's 0.9.
0.9.
So we're not trying to be tongue in cheek. Like that old Aura is a beta. Like I know that sounds weird, but like to us it is, right? It took off so fast, which is amazing. But systems like software gets to a point where if it scales faster than where it was meant to scale to technically, you're going to have to pause and rebuild. That's just how software works. You don't build it to scale to tens of thousands of people initially because you don't even know if you're going to get 20, right? But eventually you have that problem. Luckily we did. So it's been fun. It's funny, even like search, right? Like even something as simple as search. I mean, we use it daily, right? So even when I'm using it, I'm like, it's so much easier to use. It's wonderful.
Yeah, no, and I totally, I mean, I remember when you were doing like the Wholesale Made podcast easy, and then I forgot, I think I came across you. You were like live sourcing like every like Tuesday night or something. I don't know what day it was. But I was like, this is crazy. Like you would just go, like you'd be like, hey, someone give me a niche, and then like you kind of do live sourcing. And I was like, geez, like this is crazy.
Yeah, every Tuesday for probably 2.5, almost 3 years. Yeah, in our Facebook group, like 15,000 people. We didn't charge for it. You can join the group for free. You can participate for free. The point there was we knew we were building a software company, not an information, a course company. So for us, we're like, well, if nobody's really giving access to this kind of education to wholesale, and we have it, and we don't really want to be course creators, that's just not our thing. We like software and tech. Why don't we just teach it for free? And then that helped us get traction from a community audience perspective, so that when we did go to launch Aura the first time, like the original beta, we weren't launching to crickets, right? We had people who knew us. And this is important, like when you're launching something new, especially something that impacts revenue, profitability, the user base needs to be able to trust the team, not the product. software will always have bugs, but the people need to know if something goes wrong, the team's going to take care of them. They're going to be there and care. So yeah, we did that. I mean, I remember I was in college too, so I would jump into the library, steal one of the little mini conference rooms, and I would live source in between studying. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that is like a huge difference. Like, I mean, we both probably use a lot of software like in this space. And like, there was actually an ASIN the other day that like I could not figure out why it would not go down in price. So like, I like write out this whole thing, like put in the chat bot or whatever, and then like I was just going back and forth with like Finn. Within like 15 minutes, he was like, "Yeah, like it looks like you have to go like down this much and like catch it down there, and then like it will push back up." And like sure enough, in 5 minutes it went down, and then it stayed there. Like I bit the bullet, like made $1 less for like 2 or 3 sales, and like it jumped back up. But like I would have never been able to like see that or figure that out without just kind of like talking to you guys.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? When we started it, because we have been Amazon sellers, when we started the company, we're like, how do we want to be different? And I mean, the first thing that came to my mind was support and success. Yeah. It's like, I'm so over the outsourced success and support. And we were even told by advisors, oh, you should outsource that. It's not worth your time. That's a cost center. Send it to the Philippines. But just thinking about it rationally, no, like this is how we get to learn and get feedback from our users who pay us money, who want this to be better, and we want it to be better. And if nobody else can solve that problem because like, oh, it's just not possible, I'm like, well, why don't we at least try and prove ourselves wrong? And it turns out we were right. We just found the way to solve the problem because we could define it better. We cared to solve it. So yeah, with even our like support and success, we've always been consultative. Like if it's just a simple answer, a bot's going to give you or a simple question, a bot's going to give you the answer because it's just, I can get it to you faster 24/7. But if it's, hey, can you go deeper on this for me and help me figure out what the heck's happening? Yes, we can also do that. And I think that's important because what we do is very technical and confusing at times, even for us. Sometimes we're like, what's happening here? But it's good that you can have that question and not feel alone and just be able to ping the team and say, hey, here's an ASIN, what's happening? And we can tell you exactly what's happening.
Yeah, because I feel like a lot of times too is like, it would actually happen to be like one of my biggest ASINs. So it was like very in the moment, like didn't really want to wait 24 hours. And like was able to figure this out. Like, wait 24 hours, get an answer, get
go back and forth.
And then it's like 2 days later and it's like, you got it solved. So yeah, that's awesome. Do you guys still sell on Amazon or no?
Yeah, so we have a internal demo account. So we do enough OA so that we have listings that are live that we can test stuff. Because there's times where like, especially with like the new AI model, when we were first alpha testing that, I don't want to go to our users, even beta users, and say, we have this crazy theory. Can we try it on your business? Like, no. So, right, because things can rationally make sense until you put it into reality and they're like, oh, that's not really how this works. I mean, there's just little things you find. And so we have enough SKUs to where we can basically throw AI on it, tweak the model however we want, and just see what happens. Because there are counterintuitive things that, especially when you're letting it run wild, you can discover. And so you need to be able to go in there, say, take the price down to a penny and just see what happens. See what the model does with that. Like crazy situations that you can't fake that. A lot of times when you're writing code, you can do things like unit testing and say, okay, well, I expect the value to be this based on what I'm giving it. And that is useful when we do that. But there's times where it's a theory, it's an idea, it's just a curiosity. And you're like, let's go find out what this does. So we're not active sellers. I wouldn't consider myself a seller anymore by any stretch of the imagination. More so, I consider myself like a tech founder, but we do have an internal account that we source enough from.
That's all. That's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Oh, we got a question. You guys have questions? Drop them in the chat. Dillon, does Aura do Amazon business repricing as well?
So not yet. That's something we want to go into. Here's the thing about running software. There's like 90,000 things you want to do, and then you have to prioritize. We do want to do that. What I can say is like, we have only been North America, so just 3 marketplaces. And in the next few weeks, we have the systems in place to support this, but there's a few more tweaks we need to make. We'll support all 20 marketplaces globally, like overnight, like amazing currency conversion, all that good stuff. So there's a lot, we have people say, hey, what about Walmart? We want to look at it, but we just have not maximized what we can do impact-wise on Amazon by itself, right? So there's still a lot there, but that's something we do want to look at. We're actually kind of working with some of our SB API Amazon reps. We flew out to Seattle for their dev summit and met our reps in person, all that good stuff. So there's like key people that kind of own different areas, and one of the guys is business pricing. So we're actually going to speak with him soon and kind of get a lay of the land there.
Cool. So you want to give an overview? Like, I know you have a very because we've talked before and I've just watched your content. I really like how you think. You're very into systems and scaling.
Mm-hmm.
So if we take it a step back, let's just say we're both new and know nothing about repricing. Why is it important? How should we be thinking about it, and kind of a little baseline?
Yeah, great questions. So let's start with what's true. Roughly 82% of organic sales happen in one place, and that's the buy box. Unfortunately, only one seller, one offer can be in the buy box at any one time. So if you're not in it, the likelihood of you getting sales goes dramatically down. So this changes, by the way, in a lot of competitive cases, second by second. Now, you may not see this happen on Amazon.com because those pages typically are cached up to 15 minutes. But if you're looking at the actual data of what is true there, I mean, it is second by second in a lot of cases. Sometimes it's day by day if it's super slow and a non-competitive high BSR listing.
That's good to know, because sometimes I'm looking at Seller Amp and then my actual price on Amazon.
Yeah.
I'm like, which is it? I'm hoping it's the higher one. And sure enough, I'm going to sell, and at the higher one, I'm like, okay, just checking here.
Yeah, and it's hard, right? Because as Amazon sellers, we spend a lot of time on Amazon.com and we're refreshing the page. It's actually not a good thing to do, although you can do it in incognito mode, and that does help remove some of the caching. What you really want to do is look at the data from APIs or software. That tends to be the most accurate and up to date. And keep in mind, the average consumer buying your products are not going to Amazon.com and refreshing it every hour. That's probably less the case. Or probably, most things are happening on mobile anyways, and the mobile app is going to cache far less. So okay, 82% happen there. What do you want? You want sales. Okay, so how do we get sales? Well, you get in the buy box. Why? That's where roughly 82% of sales are happening. How do you do that? Well, typically you need what's called a better offer. And unfortunately, in the Amazon space, that means a lower offer. Now, we're being simplistic here, because that just means I'm telling you to lower your price. And that's really not what you want. Now, that's what Amazon wants, right? I like to think about things in terms of incentive models. However, when you look at software, you tend to design things to say, if we incentivize this action, it will happen more. So Amazon has incentivized their model to say a better offer, a lower offer, we'll get the buy box more. Well, sounds good for them and the consumer, but horrible for you because you want profits. So we have this conundrum, which is we want to find a balance between velocity, right? So how many units, how much volume are we moving? We want to maximize that. And how you do that is by having a better offer and being in the buy box more, but also protecting profitability. That protecting profitability is where third-party repricing tools come into play. Amazon has a pricing tool. It only goes down for a reason. So that's why we exist, right? Is to take this concept of how do we maximize your time in the buy box, but also do it intentionally and intelligently so that you're not losing profits. We can listen, I can drop your prices by 40% today, and I promise you'll get a ton more sales, but you're not gonna be happy about it. So what is happening is 24/7, the software is watching your SKUs. Every single time something changes on that listing, we get a notification, we check it, and we say, what needs to happen here based on your strategy or a model. We then submit a price change back and update back. That is doing a few different things depending on what your goal is, right? You might be trying to liquidate, in which case you might want to keep pushing it down, or you might want to be protecting profits, in which case you might just try to match, or you might try to pull it up intentionally. So simply speaking, repricing optimizes your prices 24/7 to protect profits and increase sales. That's it.
Got it. Yeah, no, that's a really good explanation for most people. And yeah, being in the buy box is, I've definitely tested some listings this year with no buy box or no sales rank, and if they do not work, they are extremely, extremely hard to liquidate and get rid of.
Yeah.
Like I have stuff I just can't get rid of it. Like I'm just hoping Q4 like it's gonna take it away. I mean, hopefully it does. But so can you cover like what the oscillation mode is? Because that's kind of how I reprice. We've kind of talked about it on here, but your definition and like speaking on it, it's going to be much better.
Sure. Yeah. And I have more context to give because this world is changing. So I'm going to reframe it a little bit, but I'm still going to answer the question. If you asked me a year ago, like most users do when they first come to us, hey, what strategy do I get started with? I have a pretty good answer, and it works roughly 80% of SKUs. That's called the oscillation strategy. We already talked about velocity and profitability, right? These are kind of the two levers we tend to look at. The oscillation, and oscillation is just a wave. That just means it's going up and down, right? So in order to increase velocity, we go down. And by going down, I mean we are capturing more percentage of the buy box. And then profitability, trying to maintain that, is when we're going up. So what the oscillation strategy does is it says, I'm going to keep myself in the buy box as much as I can by repricing below buy penny. I know the moment I say reprice below buy penny, everybody goes, you're a price tanker, you're horrible, you're a penny chaser, get out of here. To a degree, there is some truth to that. If I stop the conversation now, I would agree with you. But that going back to a higher price is where I would start to disagree. So what you do is you have very tight but reasonable mins and maxes, a min-max range, right? Your max can't be too high. You don't want it to be too low either because you're just wasting profitability potential. But the idea is if we have, let's say our price is at 35 bucks on average, I'm probably going to have a minimum price of 32 and then a max price of 38, maybe 40, depending on how much competition there is. And the idea here is I can increase your sales velocity or the volume of units you're moving by putting you in the buy box more. But by repricing you to your max price once you've reached your minimum price, I've actually reset the average net profit per unit. So what a lot of sellers do is they get way too specific per unit on profitability instead of zooming out and taking a look at the grand scheme. You have 200 units. You should not be worrying about maximizing the net profit of every single unit. Yeah. What you should be doing is looking at how can listen, if I can help you move 20% more volume of those units in the same period of time, but have the same average net profit per unit, you still made more for the most part, right? Depending on the situation. But what that aims to do is essentially that, right? Like, how do we make sure we're moving inventory in a healthy way while still protecting profit? So we're going to have some units that are going to sell at 33 and 32 at our minimum, but we're also going to have some units, if done correctly, selling at 38, 37, 35.
Yeah.
So what's interesting is when we first launched and started to test, because, everybody's like, oh, here's how you do it. And I'm like, man, there's a lot of people saying, here's how you reprice that's never ran a repricing company and don't have as much data as we do. Maybe we should kind of help here. Yeah. And it was controversial when we started to say these things because people are like, oh, that doesn't make any sense. Actually, it does. And I'm not saying it works 100% of the time. Nothing really ever does. But it works 80% of the time very, very well. Now, this does begin to require how you set max prices, how you set min prices. These things matter. And unfortunately, and fortunately, to a certain degree, every single product, that listing, it's its own little mini economy. I mean, the supply and demand changes moment by moment. A toy in Q1 is very different priced than that same toy in Q4. And these things start to matter. And so I mentioned that if you asked me that a year ago, that was my answer. That's the oscillation strategy. If you ask me that today, I don't have a good answer for you.
Okay.
Because the reality is two major things are happening: more complexity and more speed. That's what's required. So really what should happen, and my answer when people ask me this now, is every single one of your SKUs should have a perfectly optimized strategy for it. And it should change hour by hour. Good luck. You can't do it. Okay, so how do you solve that problem then? How do you handle speed and more complexity? Well, luckily technology does a pretty good job with that. And this is kind of what Maven, our new AI model, and I say model intentionally, is designed to do. We realize it's less about giving you, 15 machine learning AI strategies, which garbage. That's means nothing to me. What you really need is a model that can actually run its own experiments and understand for competitor A, the only way I can win the buy box is by being 10 cents below them. But competitor B, they're going to match me all day long, and I can do the same thing. So we can get hyper specific. So we can study your competition, build profiles for each one, and we can self-adapt over a period of time. So if we could do that and we have this memory, we call it AI memory. It's a ton of information that we study and store and update in real time. Well, now what we can do is we can say, well, what is true on this listing? What is true for the competition? And what we can do is we can take that and we can then design a strategy on the fly in real time that is optimized for that SKU, and then it can change over time. That's what's important. And so where the world is going is that, is being able to handle that level of complexity. So how we handle and are trying to solve that complexity problem is Maven, our AI model. And then on the speed side, we have something called Hyperdrive, which again, we spent the last 18 months rebuilding, redesigning everything on the back end to enable stuff like this. We found, so let me give some context here. When a repricing company says we have instant repricing, what they mean and what we mean is on our end, we're not slowing you down. We are instantly receiving and sending back an update. We're not adding any delay. So if you're paying a very low amount and you're only repricing once every 15 minutes, that's because the company said, you're not paying us enough to get instant repricing, so we're slowing you down intentionally. You're getting penalized for that. Now, it's not truly instant because to go full round trip from the repricing software submitted the update, we now have to wait for that to be confirmed by Amazon. On average, that's 1.5 to 2 minutes. It can vary a little bit, but that tends to be the balance. So instant repricing really means 1.5 to 2 minutes that it will be confirmed via the system. Okay, that's fine, and that's baseline. We found a way for up to 50 SKUs. There's an engineering limit here. We can do that full round trip in 10 seconds.
Wow.
Within 10 seconds, technically. Sometimes it's actually 10, sometimes it's 5 seconds. It depends. It kind of ranges. So complexity and speed. And so what's nice is Maven actually sits on top of Hyperdrive by default. So that's right. So the way when we're talking about repricing, when we're talking about running Amazon-based businesses now, I think the conversation needs to start to shift towards things like complexity, things like technical leverage. We've talked a few times on this, John, where it's like I geek out with tech and automation and all that stuff. But I think we're really getting to a point where that's becoming paramount to scale.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed that a lot too, where it's just like the repricing inventory. It's just very individual by SKU, especially if you're doing you're bringing back stuff that was in stock at one point and you're bringing that back. And just sometimes it's I'm not getting it at, let's just say for argument's sake, 20%, but I don't want to set it to 10%.
Right.
If it was just a percentage point more, but then I don't want to stop the price. So usually I'll just put don't go below this price. But I was oh man, if I just, I was well, I don't want to make a whole new rule for 19%. Right. It's just this whole thing. But then if you sell the SKU enough, eventually you kind of figure out what that bottom needs to be to jump it back up.
Yeah, and when you're talking AI, right, because this is a term that's getting thrown around a lot. In some use cases, it's very real, and in others, they're just using it for marketing language, unfortunately. Models are designed and fine-tuned for a specific outcome. I think that's important to understand. When you say, I have a model, what's it designed to do? Maven is designed to find balance between velocity and profitability. Those are those two levers. So instead of us coming in and saying we're going to prioritize one of these versus the other, we said we should have a balance. And what's so interesting is when we have users come in and they flip everything over to Maven, one of two things happen. Either they get more velocity and a little bit less profitability, but that's actually good because it's bringing you to a healthy middle ground again, or the inverse occurs. And so we've seen some users say, hey, I'm moving less units, a little bit less. But we take a look and it's oh, well, your margin's up 15% and your total sales revenue is actually higher. So that's actually a good thing. It means you're being actually a little too aggressive on your pricing and you're giving something up for that. And so what's nice is when you have that, so how do you define that balance? Well, we call it an optimal price. At any moment, there's an optimal price, and it changes. And what's so nice is we can do this even without competition. Like we were testing this with an OA item. We were the only sellers when we came on. The model calculated the optimal price at 98. We got a sale there, but then something changed in the data that made the model raise the optimal price. So we raised it to, I think it was 112. We got 2 sales there back to back, and then a competitor jumped on. And what's nice is we were competing at that price range, not the 95. So Aura using Maven actually does not need competitors anymore, which is so crazy to think about. And so, we were talking about this idea of leverage, right? Leverage is just the concept that I can put in 1 unit of input and get more than one out, right? Where the world is going here is you should be able to handle more complexities as a user in terms of what you're getting out of it by doing less. And so if you look at rule-based strategies, still effective, but you mentioned this already, right? Like, do I really want to have to create another strategy here for this other thing? And it's a lot of settings. I mean, it is. That's why it's overwhelming, because you have people who are not as nerdy as we are coming in, and they're like, how do I perfectly optimize this? I'm like, how long do you got? And it's not like it can't be done. It certainly can be. And this is why we like to be very consultative with our users who are coming in. Like, I just don't know where to start. We can help you with that. But the ideal end state here is you give one setting. So Maven asks for one thing. How do you want to set your min prices? It.
Wow.
And right. So you're getting dramatically better performance with one setting versus, I forget exactly how many we have in the rule set. If I were to, I might is it all out, probably 20 to 30 in reality that you could, perfectly optimize and tweak. And what's nice is you don't need 15 strategies. You need one model that then creates as many strategies as we need in real time. So max prices are gone, right? We've joked about this for years, where it's like min prices are perfectly personalized to you and how you buy. Max prices have nothing to do with you, but they're still important. So we've solved that problem with Maven now. So now we auto calculate on the fly in real time, something we call auto max. So it factors in more things than just what your cost. We look at things like, what's the last price the buy box was suppressed at? Is Amazon giving us a competitive offer price, which 15 to 20% from what we've seen in our data set do include that? Okay, well, we know it's going to suppress it if you go above that. We can factor all these things in. And again, what's nice is both the optimal price and the max price, that same toy in Q1, very different than that same toy in Q4. And so now you don't have to go in and be like, well, what should my strategies be for Q4? Let it do that for you. That's already solved.
Yeah, and that's a really good point too, because with Keepa, I'm on something right now, and it will sell between 50 and 70. Usually it's selling for around 52, and it gets most of the sales, and then every, I don't know, call it 7 sales, it gets the 70. Yeah. I've tried it just to keep it at 70, doesn't work.
Right.
So I just have to do, it's why wouldn't you get an extra $20? Well, because I can't get it every single sale. And I'm selling hundreds of these, so I'd rather just let it go up and down. But on Keepa, it never shows that $70.
Yeah.
It just shows the high as 55. So you would never know unless you really put it to 70 and see what happens.
Yeah.
I do. So I had some stuff. I love reading your Twitter, and I came up.
Oh, thanks.
No, there's one.
I'm trying to be more active.
Yeah, no, there's one tweet you had that I kind of want you to go more into. It says your sales suck because you don't optimize the ROI on your spending. Source 4+ hours a day, every day.
Yeah.
Make scalable decisions.
Yeah.
Can you go more into that?
Yeah, for sure. So the 4 hours, I'll focus on that one for a moment. A lot of sellers, I chose 4 hours intentionally. Most sellers work full-time jobs, and most of them really only have 4 hours a day to dedicate to the business, period. And so if you look at, okay, well, what's the best use of your time? It's buying inventory. It's not prepping. And I get it. Everybody wants to, I'm working hard and I'm hustling and I'm in the trenches. Nobody needs you to be that. Okay. We need you to make money and do well and grow. So they'll get a prep center and stop touching inventory, because the whole thing is your time is so precious and so valuable and limited. 1 hour, it's like, oh, well, it's only an hour in the evening and I enjoy it. I get that. But you're running a business here. And so the opportunity cost of you doing your prep, which is really like you could outsource it for not much. The opportunity cost is potentially thousands of dollars for that same hour of you sourcing more inventory. So being able to sit down and actually focus and do the work for 4 hours, from what I've seen in the conversations I've had with sellers, that's not the case. They are working a lot, but actually they're only sourcing for like 45 minutes out of the 4 hours, right? Because, well, I got to learn this thing. I got to consume that content and blah, blah, blah. So I'm a big fan of the difference between just-in-time knowledge and just-in-case knowledge. Just in case is what we tend to operate within, right? Oh, that sounds interesting. I should probably know that. I should probably know how to manage 20 VAs, even though I've never hired one. You don't, right? What you need to do is be able to reverse engineer your goals and then understand, okay, well, if I want to hit 10,000 units a month in sales, what needs to be true? Okay, I need to be able to source X, Y, Z. Okay, well, what's keeping me from doing that? Is it a knowledge problem or a physics problem? Physics problem meaning like literally you don't have the time. Okay, that's fine. Most things, by the way, are knowledge problems, not physics problems. We're not bending metal and all kinds of quantum mechanics stuff, right? Like we're buying things on the internet and selling it. So it's a knowledge problem. So okay, if we're like, well, I really struggle to purchase enough inventory in the same 4 hours. Okay, now it's worth you to go learn how to do it more effectively and efficiently. You've earned the right to consume the knowledge to solve a problem you actually have now. That's just in time. You're consuming things just when you need it, not for this theoretical future. So that's going to free up a lot of time for you right there. So for most sellers getting started, especially if you're doing like OA, RA is different because you got to spend like 10 hours doing it anyways. At least I did because I was not good at it. But for like
when I started books, that's how it was. It was like I didn't look for the whole process. I saw a video and I was like, oh my God, like you could buy books and sell them on Amazon. So like ran to a thrift store, got like whatever the software was at the time.
Yeah.
And I got home and I was like, I guess I got to get these to Amazon. Like, let me see how to do that. Like, figure out how to create a shipment, which took like 4 hours. And it's like, okay, is this working? Should I get more? And then you just like kind of piece it together. If I looked for everything, I don't know if I would have started because I'd be like, oh, this seems like a lot of work.
Right.
Like,
no, for sure. And it doesn't matter the business model. Like we do this in software. Like I never learned how to recruit and hire somebody until we're like, we need to hire somebody. I was like, great, let's go learn how to do that. First time we had to hire an engineer, I'm like, I don't know how to do that. Like, let's go figure it out. Right. That's when you go read the books and take a course or what have you.
you froze. Let's see if it unfreezes. Let's see. The private chat.
I'm gonna sneeze.
Did I lose you guys?
Yeah, you were just frozen. I was gonna put it in the private chat.
Sorry. Darn, I hit something so good, we'll never get it back now. Sorry about that. So my point is your time, because it's such a limited resource, needs to be used for the highest ROI stuff. So stop making decisions that are like, but like it only costs me 20 cents of my time, or it costs me nothing because it's only my time to prep my own inventory versus $1 or 75 cents per unit. But you're not factoring in the opportunity cost. So being able to sit down and actually do the work that matters, that alone will get you much further than anything else. Just being able to sit down and focus on the right things consistently. In terms of making scalable decisions, you should be making decisions not based off where you're at, but where you want to go. So when I was doing wholesale, I was like, I could do my own inventory, blah, blah, blah. But I was like, well, I want to be able to sell 30,000 units or 300,000 units just as easy as 300 units. Now that's like, how is that possible? Well, you don't know unless you try to solve that problem, right? And so one of the big reasons of pushing into wholesale was there was no difference to me in my time whether my quantity on my PO was 3 units or 300,000 units. It took longer lead times to process things at the prep center and blah, 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 but not more of my time. So now all of a sudden, my hour is processing 300,000 units, and my system, the machine that is the business, can handle that just as easy as it can 3.
Yeah.
So a lot of sellers are in this hustle kind of mindset. And listen, I'm not saying don't work hard. That's not my point. But I would rather you be highly leveraged and work smarter than hustling your face off, just making it harder. Like you're honestly operating at 40% of your potential. And it could be easier, and you could be having higher outputs, right? By thinking different and building a system that can scale. So like even Aura's support, when we were building that out, I was like, my theory is that one full-time person can manage, thousands upon thousands of users. And everybody's like, that's not possible. How do you know that? Have you tried to solve that problem? Well, no, it's just not possible. Okay, well, then you're giving me no evidence. Let me go prove it right or wrong. Turns out, yeah, you can actually. Right? You just have to know. But then that's when you go to the knowledge and you try to solve that problem. What was the first thing in that tweet? I forgot.
Let me pull back up here. Oh, optimize the ROI on your spending.
Yeah. A lot of sellers coming into this don't have a ton of funding, right? You're not coming into this with $50,000. Most people are coming in here with a $3,000 credit card, right? That's normal. So a lot of sellers are struggling because they're not trading a 8% ROI that they can get today for a 30% ROI item tomorrow. So there's 2 phases you will be in. You have some capital, if not a lot, and not a lot of inventory, in which case you need to be spending that capital, right? Because if the capital is sitting there and being stale, you're getting 0 ROI, in which case the opportunity cost is higher. So you're actually losing money in theory, right? So if you're in that bucket and you're like, I still got money, great, go spend it on 8%. I don't care. Like, churn it. But you very quickly get to a point where you're good at sourcing inventory. So now the problem is not inventory, it's capital. So a good way to continue to grow, because most Amazon sellers are not going to go raise funding on equity. They're not going to, bring in a partner. They can take on debt, but most of the time it's going to be credit card. So you got to be very specific in how you deploy that. You're not going to go get like an FBA loan or something like that, right? At like a fixed rate. Like that comes much later. So you're in this weird limbo stage where you need to be able to continue to grow. And because you can't put more capital into the system, what you can do is make the capital more efficient. And I did this with wholesale, right? So I would basically order every month my products based on ROI, lowest to highest. And then because I'm getting new accounts. And so I get to a point where I have to make a decision. I have this $10,000. How am I spending it? Well, just because it's profitable doesn't mean it's worth my capital. So I would have things that were doing 12% ROI because I had the capital to spend. But then I would get an account that would consume that same amount of spend on that PO, but it was 24% ROI. Great. That one's gone. Now I have a 24%. I just made more money by spending the same amount of capital, but the dollars coming back to me is higher, so I can compound that over a period of time. Right. This level of like how to think about it, I think is super important. A lot of sellers are just like, well, it's profitable, buy it. Maybe not though. Like it depends on where you're at. And so being able to pause and take a step back and looking at it from that perspective. And really, I mean, this all comes down to being data driven, right? Look at your data. What is it saying? How can you make one decision that increases your margin by 30%? And it really didn't take that much work. And so if you only have 4 hours, by the way, in a day, and you're spending it on prepping your own inventory, you're not sourcing enough, and you don't have the time to be able to spend going into your systems and your data to make these kind of analysis and decisions. So
there's
time
like
matters.
So much good stuff there because I've kind of fallen in the trap of like doing a little prep because now I have a bigger space and like, I can get it out quicker or whatever. But like I've realized that like while that is true and it's going to like a better fulfillment because it's going to the East Coast where I am, I was like, well, I need to hire a prep center in the East Coast. But like the timing for that right now is just not ideal with like Q4 and stuff.
Sure.
But like when you said that, it's like you're not just like prepping, it's like getting the packages, like it's like putting the labels on them is just not all the prep, right? It's like boxing it up. Like I would say people say, oh, it took an hour. It probably took you like 2 hours. By the time you like take out the garbage and like do all this other stuff that's like entailed with it.
And listen, I own part of a prep center. The team on average, depends on what coach you're on, makes 15 to 18 bucks an hour. I promise you your time is worth more than that. And they're probably much better at it than you are because that's all they do, right? Like that's their problem to solve. And so it's nice that you get to take this whole problem of like, how do we scale prep and blah, blah, blah. And you just say, you go solve it and here's $1 per unit. I don't want to care about it anymore.
Yeah, that's basically, I've noticed that too. Like the stuff I send is always like a shorter unit or there's always an issue, but like the prep center, there's like never an issue. And then I also like what you're talking about, like with the sourcing time, like I actually have like this timer now, like that I just put, because like for me, it's like, and I've said this a lot before, it's like everyone thinks they're sourcing so much, but like they're on their phone doing Instagram or like they don't find anything. So like, oh, let's see what's going on Instagram. And then 2 hours goes by, like, oh, I sourced for 2 hours.
Yep.
It's like, not really. Like if you look at the clock, like it's been 20 minutes. And it's also good for that too. It's like, because like sometimes like, oh, I can't find anything. It's like, dude, it's been like 12 minutes. Like what do you expect? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Before
I've been on Twitter for 10 of the 12 minutes anyway, so.
Yeah, that's like according to the clock. Like, no, that's not true. But yeah, no, those are all like really good points. What do you think some of the newer sellers, what kind of mistakes are they making? And like, kind of how would you think about that?
It's a broad question. I'm going to take it to a different place because I don't think it's a tactical thing. I think too many people go tactical too fast on this kind of stuff. Yeah. Honestly, language. That sounds like the weirdest thing I could have ever said, right? But I'll explain why. I used to say this even with the Wholesale Made Easy podcast, right? When you're reaching out to brands, you're like, I'm an Amazon seller. Good luck getting approved, right? What you are is an e-commerce brand in the United States that focuses in this category. It's the same thing, but the perspective and positioning is different, right? And so this is also true for the individual, right? If you look at like habit formation, you know, the biggest thing is identity, right? If you want to be more athletic, don't try to be someone who's athletic. You are an athlete now. And what kind of decisions would an athlete make? So think about this. Here's a cool example for you to go do. Go to Amazon and go to search for books. Search for business or books for business owners. Okay. And then go search books for founders. You know what's so funny? If you own a business, you're a founder because you founded the company, and you own the business if you're a founder. But what is different is the perspective. So the reason why I don't say I'm a business owner, I say I'm a tech founder, is intentional, because tech founders act differently, and even founders are very different. Business owners tend, if you look at especially like the hiring kind of philosophy in the business owner language world, it's just outsource it. Just get somebody who is cheaper than you to go do it. You know what founders do? We find people who are 10 times smarter than we are, who's already solved that problem, and we pay them really good money to go solve it for us. We are the dumbest ones in the company.
Yeah.
And it's like,
that makes sense.
But like, that is so interesting that you're still a founder, you're still a business owner. It doesn't change anything, but your perspective changes. And so I think a lot of sellers getting started should make a very clear decision. Is this a hobby for you? There's nothing wrong with that, but know that, because the decisions you should make are very different than the person who's trying to get to 7 and 8 figures. A hobby doesn't really do that. Right. Are you building a business or a company? A company is something that has key core members, and it's not a bunch of VAs, I promise you, that can operate and grow without you. It's a different decision set you're making. A business is still important. There, again, nothing's better or worse than the other ones. It's just an intentional decision you should make. A business is what most Amazon sellers have. They still have to operate in it. They can't take a break, because if they stop, everything stops. Right. So you need to get clear on what you're building and then utilize the language to reinforce that. Are you an Amazon seller, or are you building an e-commerce company? But it's the same thing, right? But it's just
Right.
how you think is so fundamentally different. Like, do you have a prep center or do you have a 3PL? It's still a 3PL that focuses on Amazon, but it's different, right? So I think a lot of sellers, for many people, this is their first business.
Yeah.
And I think it's worth pausing from time to time, especially once you've got it working. You've made money. That alone is the coolest thing ever. Now pause and say, what does that mean for me and what do I want? And then go and reverse engineer what you want. Do you just want to be able to quit your job and just make enough to do that? Perfect. Go solve that problem. Don't go try and build an 8-figure business. Not yet, at least. Maybe you don't care to do that. But a lot of sellers enter this limbo state where they have this crazy vision of like, I want to work for myself. You know, it's crazy. It doesn't take that much to do. It feels like that when you're getting into it, when you haven't done it, but you know, you do it enough where you have enough income to pay your bills and like you're self-sustaining and like, great. It took you 12 months. What about the next 8?
Yeah.
Or I'm sorry, the next 8 years is what I meant. Right? Like, what then? Are you just going to hang out? You're probably going to get bored, right? Like entrepreneurs, we get bored pretty easily. So, and Michaela, this is why I like your content, because I have seen you talk about this level of strategy where you're like, I'm doing X to get to Y to get to Z. I think that's important because now you get to make decisions that to other people might make no sense, but to you make perfect sense. Mm-hmm. And it's the right decision. And so you don't have to have every answer. I still don't. Like the next 10 years, I'm like, I kind of have an idea, but not really. But you do need to be thinking about these things. And I think how you build your identity as a business owner or a founder or whatever makes sense to you is important, because the decisions you make, like, you know, we're founders. We don't just pay ourselves a ton of money out of the company. No, that's salary. And like, we're building value here, right? Like, we're not trying to build this so we have crazy, awesome lifestyles and Lambos and like nothing wrong with it. I like cars and nice things too. But why we are here building this thing is we're building something of massive impact and value. Now, we could still build the same software company and have a different philosophy on it, and that would also be fine. But for like James and I, we're impact led. I want to build an amazing company with an amazing team that provides incredible impact at a high scale.
Yeah.
That's what I want, right? And so there are decisions that we make that somebody with a different philosophy would be like, that's dumb. But to us, we're like, the inverse is dumb, right? And there's no right answer. So, you know, it's less about what are these little mistakes in terms of like listing optimization and sourcing strategies. Like, honestly, I don't even think that that's the issue. I think there's deeper things. There's these foundational things that nobody's talking about in our space that actually end up holding people back when they're like, well, why can't I do X, Y, and Z? Well, you're missing a piece of the puzzle, but it's just not really being talked about as often as it should.
Yeah, I've definitely learned that a lot now. I consider myself like pretty ingrained in the community and like I just know a lot of people. And it's like when you go to these networking events, right? Like what you see online, and we all really know like there's always more to the story, right? Like you guys just didn't whip up Aura 1.0 in like a day or whatever, right?
God,
like,
I wish we did.
Yeah, it's like you've been working years, right? Because like you learn stuff, and now it's like here we are. Mm-hmm. And like when you look at these businesses and like you see the numbers that are posted, and then you go to these events, you're like, oh, okay, like here's 10 puzzle pieces that like I can see now how like they got to that or like whatever. And just like very interesting to like see. Or it's hard to see sometimes at the beginning.
Yeah, Michaela, I'm kind of curious, like your strategy and trajectory. Like, how did you get to like that being the thing you want to do?
I think it's important to have those goals in mind. I mean, don't be like, well, I need to do this by this day or this by this point in the selling career. Like when I started selling, I had no intention of ever doing this full time. Because I was in medical school, I had my acceptance and I was getting ready to go. I had my apartment and everything, but sometimes you know, throws obstacles in your way and you've got to overcome them. So from that point forward, I was like, okay, so if I'm doing this, like I have to have some kind of path in mind that I have to aim for, because if not, then what else do I fall back on? Like I declined my acceptance. So like this was it.
Yeah.
So setting those early on, I think were really important. Some people are like, well, if you set goals too high early on, then if you don't, achieve those, then will you get like, upset about it and like give up? No, I'm not that kind of person. Like when I see something that I want, I'll go after it and I'll do whatever it takes to get there. So I think kind of setting those early on, and then I don't know, it's just kind of like a snowball effect for me. I reached one goal, and then after that one I was like, well, what can I do to do even better than that one? I wanted to hit 7 figures in my first year selling. I hit that one, and then I was like, well, I want to get into real estate now. I want to own. The goal was 6 houses this year. I've only got half of that right now, but
okay. I only own 3 of them, but no, it's cool. I mean, but that's important, right? Because what you just illustrated is you didn't have all the answers when you got started. You just got started, and I think that is important. And what's nice is as you get momentum and you start to work on it, you start to learn things that then help you make better decisions, right? It's like when we started with software company, it wasn't like we're going to build this, $10+ million business. It's like, no, this would just be fun to work on. And then it started to take off. We're like, oh, I wonder if we could like graduate and just do this full time. Oh yeah, we can. Okay, well, what next, right? And like you build upon that, but I think it is important that you still have some level of perspective as to like where you would like to go, because it's I see this a lot. People start making some money in business, and all of a sudden everything's profitable from their perspective. I can go do this. And while that kind of can be true, it's easy to get derailed, right? I mean, there's opportunities I have to make way more where I'm just like, yeah, but like, that's not what I'm doing here. That's not what I'm here to build, right? How do you know when to say no to certain things, right? And I think that gets kind of important. This is one of the reasons why I think people jump from model like RA to OA to wholesale to PL to back to Kindle publishing to this other thing. It's like, you do need to be able to kind of set some level of direction and commit to that, knowing that I made this decision because of X, Y, and Z, and that makes sense for me in my life. Like I'd love to do a PL brand and exit it. That'd be super fun. But when I was transitioning and making that decision between PL and wholesale, I was like, what I really need to do is pay my bills. So we're going to go with wholesale, and maybe later we could talk PL. And honestly, I still haven't, because, that happened to, transition into software, and that took off, and this has been amazing. Like it would be fun to do, but like, I'm saying no to that because this is more awesome. This is what like the plan is for me. And so, yeah, I think people get too caught up in sourcing strategies and being like, oh, that's the issue. It's like, actually, I think there's a deeper philosophical problem that, some people just have that innately. I think that the people that come into Amazon and do really well, really fast, kind of just have that built in, but don't realize that other people don't innately have that. And so it's not like, hey, let's pause and like, let me teach you that so you can have it. It's just kind of, you're just like, what do you mean you don't get it? That kind of thing.
Yeah, you're like, what? Like, how? What don't you understand about this?
Yeah.
Sweet. And then there was one more thing that I had here. It was one of your tweets, and you said a properly built Amazon business should be managed from an iPad. Amazing team plus software equals massive leverage.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not there. I can tell you that. I don't think many people are.
Nope.
Or do you think more people are?
No, most people are not.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So why do you think that is? And like, what would kind of be like an outline to get there?
So let's break down the business into its components, right? You got sourcing. So you got inventory acquisition, you've got logistics, you've got some level of operations and finance. That's it. Right? Okay. So if we're building a company and not a business, eventually we should hire people. And I don't like the term virtual assistant. I think that has a bad moniker. I don't care if your team all live in the Philippines, but my point is like you should build a team with people that can own and do those things better than you can over a period of time. So once you understand enough how to effectively source and to train a team. I don't think you just hire a VA who's certified in sourcing.
It's not weird.
You know, I mean, yeah, right. I mean, well, even if it does, how do you know if it's good or bad? Right? It's like it was difficult for me because I had to learn enough technical knowledge to be able to ask good enough questions for the obviously bad things to come out. Right?
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I'm an engineer. Not, but like I can still ask good enough questions to kind of piece things apart and at least see, okay, you're not thinking about this over here, or I found a blind spot for you. We need to talk about that. So if you have a good enough team who can actually source profitably, all that good stuff, your logistics is pretty much all going to be prep center in theory. Like, I really don't think you need a warehouse. I know it's cheaper per unit, but that's not the point. I know there's a difference between variable costs and fixed costs. And eventually, like, you should start with a variable cost, right? Where you're paying variable, just meaning you're paying per unit, no fixed flat thing. Whereas like a warehouse, yeah, the minimum, let's just call it $1,500 a month as an example. You know, if you're doing 500 units a month and paying $1 per unit, you're going to pay $500 per month. Right. But the moment you go from 500 to 1,500, now you need to start considering having that discussion of, do we go fixed versus variable cost? I think that's a smart decision to make, but you're not also factoring in more of your time in terms of hiring, managing a team, workflow optimization, all that good stuff. And most sellers, it's funny, most sellers that end up going that route end up getting rid of it like 2 years later. And there's like, I just have a prep center. Like, it's worth the money. Right.
That's exactly what I did. I was like, I'm not running a warehouse anymore. Like,
most people do. Yeah. It's a whole problem in and of itself that needs to get solved. So, okay. The moment you do that, by the way, your entire business is digital.
Yeah.
No physicality to it. Right. So basically, if you have the right people, and you have the right tools running, and you don't have to manage every single one of your tools. All you really need to do is manage your team, check KPIs, and have one-on-ones and stuff like that. You can do Zoom on an iPad. You can use Slack and email on an iPad, and you can use Gecko Board. Like, we're big fans of Gecko Board for like dashboards for KPI tracking, browser-based. So if the business is built, not a business, if the company, I use those terms intentionally, if you're building a company in that way, why couldn't you? You know, and really, it's not that everybody should, you know, and I'm not being purist where it's like, you should never have a computer and like, blah, blah. But like, the reality of it is, if you are being intentional about how you're building the company and the team and who owns what and how things work, why couldn't you do that?
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Right. There was a post years and years ago where a CEO was like, as a CEO, I should be able to run the entire business off an iPad because all I do is take meetings and send emails. So like, what do we need here? Right. And so, and that's talking about like a highly technical, like 50+ person in the US in the same company, in the same location, software company.
I think Gary Vee just uses his phone. I heard that like an interview. Like, he might not even have a computer. I'm like, wow, that is crazy.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's what I like to do with my content is shift perspective and just get people to think differently. I'm not saying everybody should. I'm not saying I do. Like, I mean, I have like my little iPad here, but like, I work off a Mac Mini because I like it and like I need the power. But like, you know, it's a good aspiration to get to where you're not needed in day to day unless you want to be. Right. And so part of that kind of perspective of working with an iPad as an example, and that's just kind of like, you know, kind of being catchy here. It could be a phone, whatever. The point though is you should have systems in place and the right team in place to where you don't have to be tethered for things to go well. And you're not the bottleneck for the company anymore. The company's kind of like, get out of our way, please. Right.
Yeah, no, that is real. Yeah, that's kind of where I want to head, and I got some work to do before I get there. But
we all do.
Yeah. Until then, can you let everyone know where they could find you, and if you want to direct them anywhere?
Yeah. So we just, I mean, the past 18+ months, we have re-architected, redesigned, rebuilt Aura from the ground up. It is fundamentally a different product. So we love to invite anybody who's used it and left to come back, because I know there were some frustrations. Product's ridiculously better. So definitely come check it out. If you're looking for a repricing tool, like, come check us out. It's the same. So now we have Essential and Pro tier. So we have 2 tiers now. What we wanted to do is say, if basically, like, everybody can stay on the same tier, not pay us any more money, but we're going to give you way more features, bug fixes, a dramatically better performance, all that stuff, and not pay us extra. But there are sellers that need far more advanced features at a higher price, because that makes sense for them scaling up. Like, you don't want people that are doing $3 million a month in revenue paying the same as somebody doing $5,000 a month in revenue. That just doesn't make sense. So we did introduce a more pro tier, but what's nice is when you trial, which we don't ask for a credit card, we're what's known as an ungated trial. We just give you access to the pro tier, so you can experience everything, not to pay extra for that, just see if it makes sense. So yeah, we'd love to have you in. I mean, we've been beta testing for months, probably 4 or 5 months at this point, and we just came out of beta. So if you're a current user and you're not in 1.0, there's a banner when you log in to migrate. Do that, because you'll enjoy it. And then, come check us out. We're doing a lot of cool stuff. We're wanting to get back in the community more heavily on, like, content creation and stuff like that. So we'll start to ramp that stuff up here shortly. But yeah, we're doing a lot of fun stuff with, AI models, just really cool features we've never even heard of that we just found we could do. You can, like, Aura is now completely mobile friendly. Like, you can do everything on the go now. So just tons of fun stuff we're doing, and we're not done. This is just the new foundation for what we want to build on moving forward. So a lot more releases coming your way over the next year or two.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, there's a link down below for you guys. One more question. Will my lifetime beta rate be locked in?
So it depends on what situation you're in. We have a small group that are grandfathered users. That's a different situation. It's a very small group. If you're in the beta, and so legacy users that are migrating do get a pretty steep discount on Pro for a limited time. Depending on how long you've been with us is how we kind of divvy that out in terms of how long you get that that discount on Pro, and it's like a 50% discount on Pro. So it's like a great deal, and it's limited. I think middle to end November is when we'll pull that back and just be like, hey, like, it is what it is. But we want to give people time to, like, test it and all that good stuff during the beta and coming out of that. So depends. It's hard to say exactly how long you particularly get it.
Sounds like a question.
Yeah, but what you can do, you can see that actually. So if you go into billings, hit update plan, click that, choose Aura Pro, continue. Before you hit confirm to actually upgrade, it'll actually show you here's what you're getting it for and how long you're getting that discount. So you can jump in there and claim that. That's been really fun, by the way. It's been awesome to see people jump in there and be like, we'll see how cool this is, like, in our Discord. And then 2 days later, like, all right.
It's vastly different. And, like, what I will say, like, one thing, I mean, I converted Michaela into Aura. Like, everyone who I've talked to, I'm just like, they're like, oh, I use this. I was like, no, like, you gotta use Aura. They're like, no. And then, like, pretty much everyone is now using Aura. And, like, I think the big thing for me is just, like, it's almost like frictionless. Like, I've never had, like, an upgrade, and you guys are like, oh, do you want us to do it for you? Or, like,
we'll always offer to do work for you.
I was like, yeah, I think, like, that'd be great if you just set everything up for me. And, like, sure enough, like, you sent me an email, you're like, 5 minutes later, you're like, yep, Finn just like, set it all up for you. And, like, it was literally a repricing, and I was like, all right, that was the easiest thing ever. Like, thank you.
Yeah. So here's it on mobile. This is like live data. So everything you can do on the web app, you can do on mobile.
Like, is that live now?
Yeah.
I did not.
So it's not a downloadable app, but what you do is you log in on your browser into your account on the dashboard, and you add it to your home screen. It's what's known as a PWA, so a progressive web app. Every page we design for mobile first and then for desktop. So I mean, I can create strategies, everything here, everything.
That is.
And by the way, support's down there too. So if you ever need to talk to Finn, you can talk to us right there.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. That is amazing. I cannot wait to start doing that. Because sometimes it's like I will scroll my Amazon sales, like, and be like, oh, like, why is that price down? I'm like, oh, let me go on the computer real quick and like see what's going on. But yeah,
when we stop recording, I want to ask you about something we're designing.
Okay, definitely.
I can't share.
Yeah, I have
yet,
some questions for you too. All right, guys. Dillon, thank you for being here. We guys will see you guys next week. Definitely give Aura a try. Link down below. Yeah, like you said, you heard him. You don't have to give your credit card. You can just try it out, see how it goes, and then yeah, go from there.
Yeah,
all right, guys.
awesome.
Have a good
Thanks,
week,
guys.
Peace.